Okay, so at this point you should have cloned or rebuilt your own Flaskini workspace. So you should have something like this up now uh, that essentially that you have a virtual environment folder, that you have a Flaskini app that you may have already renamed to something else, and you are keeping a close track on the log here of all of the steps that you're making. So any changes that you make, you keep them updated here. That'll help you out significantly. Now, if you try to activate your source, your virtual environment, you may need to be in a different folder. Um, I've been keeping my virtual environment folder outside of my project folder, which is not typical. I did that because I was using multiple projects with the same virtual environment, which also is not typical or ideal. Um, but anyway, so that's why it's on the outside there for now. So setting up the development environment is always a tricky process. Don't get too frustrated. If you get stuck on anything, just let me know and I'll help you sort things out and make sure that you're up and running. Um, but now let's move towards, let's say that it's up, it's working. You can launch the thing after you start your server, your database server. So the app, if you wanted to test it, wouldn't work unless you service PostgreSQL start. So you've got to start your database service. Then once that's running in the background, then if you told Python to run your script and told the script to run the server, now that'll boot up your app and you should be able to see Flaskini at this point. It's a hot mess at the moment. Our class is working on making the starting template a nicer look. For now, let's turn our attention to base.html inside our templates folder. This is the root file, a root template file. So it provides us a sort of picture frame for every page will go inside this frame. It'll have our nav bar, any headers or footers we want, universal on all the sites. It'll have the head element, which is where we establish links to resources like CSS files, our fonts, our favicon, title for the website. All of that will be in the head element, which isn't really visible here on the page. We can also add, it wouldn't be in the head, usually it's at the foot, so sort of at the end, still inside the body element, but right at the end. It includes a lot of JavaScripts like jQuery, Bootstrap's version of JavaScript, and typically we have that at the end of the file so that all of the stuff in the DOM, all of this HTML content is loaded first, and then the then the JavaScripts then are called into action at the end, giving the website, the web page, a chance to set up all of its content before JavaScript runs amok and tweaks everything. So that's why we usually have it at the end. Oftentimes, it works perfectly fine if you have the scripts up at the top in the header and not in the body, but you have to be careful with how that works. Quick note, you always need to have jQuery load before Bootstrap loads, because Bootstrap depends on jQuery. So if Bootstrap were to be called after jQuery, most of the nice little Bootstrap elements, little windows you can close, pop-ups like modal windows, wouldn't really work if jQuery wasn't loaded first. Okay, so the relationship begins with extends, and this extends, if I were to create a new template here, let's say about, I don't need to, this is a complete web page. I mean, all it does is it has a hi message, but that's a complete web page because I use extends to say, hey, this is a child of the base template. So this base template loads everything in here, And then you have this little block content that says, hey, if any of my children have a block called content, replace what's ever here, and there's nothing in here at the moment. And so if I did write that word or anything else, because I have a block content here, this will overwrite the parent's block and replace that. And that's how this whole parent-to-child relationship works. I create the relationship here, and then I overwrite any blocks using this. And that allows me to have one place where all of this complex stuff is set up, and it overwrites from its child. Now you'll notice that I have a lot of blocks. I got a little carried away, to be honest with you, setting up a lot of these blocks. We don't need so many. And as we go through, we'll go over what some of these blocks mean and why I have some of them. But at the moment, the real important one is just the block content. So then we ran a short test to say, all right, let's tinker with the base template. So if I go back to the base template and I were to add in a new file, a new link to a Google font, this is establish that connection here. So now every page across my site has access to this Google font because I linked it up here. And then you'll also notice that I have a custom CSS file right here. Should be loaded last so we get the final word. And my custom CSS file, which will be inside static CSS custom here, you'll notice that site-wide I gave myself these fonts after I connected them over in that other link. And the last thing we covered here is a new route. So in order to load this new about page, to see it, I need somewhere to route to that page. And so inside my init, where I set up the route for my home page, right underneath that, I set up a route for a new page called About, and I couldn't name this whatever I wanted, and same thing with this. But what can't be named whatever I want, because it has to load this exact file, is this render template command. And this render template command will build that HTML, which will then pull in the base because it has that extends link here. All of that will get put together and returned to my user. And then here I'm setting up a variable, sticking it in this little variable here, which gets put right there. And this is saying, oh, over in my about, if I were to use some variable, or whatever it's called, what is it called? It's called my variable. If I were to use my variable right here, now you would see that variable that was passed to it from this right here. Alright, so if you have any questions, please let me know.